So the last piece of the story strategy formula is story. So let's dive into story because this piece here is honestly probably one of the hardest parts. So we've done and created this formula for tons of businesses over the last 15 years or so. And this is the place where most people struggle. Now, you're probably thinking, well, ideal customer profile, that why, how, what thing. Yeah, I've struggled there. But this is where people actually struggle because in story, now we're talking about what are the stories, what are the parables, the lessons that you have learned as a business owner over time that have caused you to become the person that you are, that created the brand that you did, and why your brand is so freaking special. That's the first part. And then the second part is making sure that your brand is seen and felt everywhere. So there are two components to the story section of the story strategy formula. And those two sections, my friends, are first is story mapping. And story mapping is what we use to help uncover the fact that you were bullied when you were 9 years old and you were bullied in a particular sort of way, which made you feel a particular thing. And so that actually manifests in how you treat your customers today because you refuse to have anyone feel that kind of way. But that's a story that needs to come out in your content. That's a story that needs to be woven in as you're answering specific questions. That's a story that helps people move along the know, like, trust journey with you. And so it's going back into your life and the life of your business and figuring out those stories and the lessons that were learned and how they're affecting you today. You see, here's the thing, and maybe you've heard me talk about this before, maybe you haven't. Either way, here's the thing. There is nothing that you've gone through in your life that was by accident. Everything that you've gone through has prepared you for today. Everything. However, there's so many things in our history that we want to turn a blind eye to, that we wish weren't there, that we might be embarrassed about, that we don't want to look at. But in those stories, in those situations, are lessons that we've learned that inform how we act today and why we are today and prepare us for the opportunities that we have today and call a spade, the content that we're making right now. Because that content that we're making right now needs to resonate with our ideal customer. And so we've got to map those stories, and you have to understand the value of those stories and how they weave into everything else to create really awesome content that helps your customer move along that journey to actually becoming your ideal customer. So, story mapping is the first. And then the second is the brand monopoly system. Now, Some people think that the brand monopoly system means, oh, I'm just going to go to every single platform and post 10 times a day. And there are a lot of experts that tell you that that's what you should do. And okay, yeah, that might actually get you to a quote unquote monopoly because you're creating so much content. But how many of us can actually do that? That's number one. Number two, is it that we're creating a ton of content that nobody actually cares about? So yes, they're seeing us a ton, but if they don't care about it, who cares? Who cares? Because it's not moving them along the know, like, trust journey. And so in our brand monopoly strategy, what we look at is how can we actually create the brand that shows up often enough in the right ways at the right times and start to build community because of these wonderful stories that we share. So that's the story component of the story strategy formula. Now, you've got all three. We've talked about strategy, we talked about content theory, now we've talked about story at a high level. This is what you have to consider before you actually start creating content. So many of us would just want to jump out there and create. And we're just slinging mud at the wall, hoping that it would stick. Instead, this is where we need to start. These are the components that we need to be paying attention to and understanding so that we're creating the content that our ideal customer wants and needs, and that helps them move along the journey to becoming your customer, to building trust with them. So those are the three. The next logical question that you must have is, okay, that's a lot. Where do I start? You start at theory. You start in the theory. Go back to the theory video. That's where you start. Because if you don't have a true understanding of your customer and you don't start building and understanding the character traits that you want to portray in the world, everything else will fall apart. Everything else will become disjointed and disjuncted. So let's go back to theory. That's where we start.